Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Week 10 edition of the Yuma County High School Football Podcast. My name is Mac Friday. That's Sam Kirk. This is our last week of the regular season, Sam. It feels like so much time has gone by, but also none at all. We're really excited to bring you guys this yet another week of high school football. And last one got some really fun matchups for you this week, Sam.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're excited again for some big local rivalries here. Fun for us to not have to worry about so many away teams and so many teams that we're kind of unfamiliar with. So we'll have a lot to talk about in this podcast and, a lot of games that really matter in terms of postseason. And again, some teams trying to crawl their way in, some teams trying to lock themselves in. So a lot going on here this week specifically.
For sure. And this is one that we've looked forward to for a long time. Obviously, four games on Friday night on Halloween. It's going to be active here in Yuma County. It's going to be an interesting and a very fun night. And like you said, we got local teams on local teams. So we've been able to, follow these teams and really build up some of their resumes and follow along with everything that's happened. And so I'm really looking forward to what this week brings. And taking on that note, we will take you into our weekly power rankings, which once again are still the exact same. And now that, Antelope and SP have wrapped up their seasons, they're pretty concrete set in those positions. Just to recap, number one, YC, number two, Gila Ridge, number three, Cibola, number four, Kofa, number five, Antelope, number six, San Pasqual, and seven and eight, Yuma High and Somerton. I think that pretty much secures the spot of Yuma High at seven, beating Somerton this past week. But those are our rankings. And then there has been some shift in the overall rankings of some of the teams this week, Sam. In the 2A rankings, Antelope locks out at number 28 on the end of the season after the loss to Trivium. And then the 4A region is actually pretty interesting. Cibola is up one spot to 26. Gila Ridge is up to one spot at 9. Kofa's down to 45, down one. And then Yuma and Somerton keeping their position at 56 and 58. And then, of course, YC has moved up into a playoff spot, Sam, at 22. Let's just jump right into what the Shamrocks did this past week. 46-7 over Willow Canyon, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, me and you both kind of saw this coming with the way they were playing heading into this game. It seems like those first five games was a different season. It seems like a second season has kind of started for YC. And again, I don't know if we can give credit enough or, a coach of the year award would never go to a team that went 0 and 5 to begin their season. But man, the job that Vernon has done in this short of a turnaround, it's tough to do that. And it's tough to keep a team, dialed in when your season's in shambles like that. Your lineup is injured, and I really give credit to the Shamrocks, and it's honestly great to see them back in this mix. And again, I'm sure a lot of those teams throughout Arizona that could potentially see them in the postseason are looking at YC now as a team that they don't really want to see in one of those matchups where, hey, we don't really know what we're getting because the first five games weren't really comparable to what it's been now. So again, sometimes that makes you a little bit more dangerous when you're heading into a postseason like this, Mac. And I'm sure just once you get in, you get in. And a lot of these teams that margin of talent is going to be a lot smaller. So I'm excited to see what this team can do, and they're playing their best football at the right time. I don't know how much you can really ask for much more here.
Definitely. Trending in the right direction. Absolutely. Completely rolling. Nash and Scout Reese each get some opportunities in this game. I think, Sam, this game against Willow Canyon was pretty much an opportunity for everybody to play. Eight different rushers for 280 yards and two touchdowns. Eight different receivers for 237 and four touchdowns. 25 different guys of all different sizes and levels and all sorts of things get a stat on defense, at least one tackle. Scout Reese, who hasn't really had the opportunity to play much, he has gotten an opportunity with that game against Verado and, got to play a little bit when Nash was hurt. 3 for 6 for 47 and throws three touchdowns on three completions. Pretty incredible. A lot of fun for both of those guys and pretty much everybody involved at YC to be able to, play those games and get involved in the game. I suspect this game against West Point, we'll get into that in the predictions, is probably going to look pretty similar. And for the playoffs, it's about seeing, like you said, a lot of teams probably don't want to see right YC right now. And with how they're trending in the right direction and their kind of mentality, they're not going to host a playoff game. So at this point, just sod it, see where you end up, and just keep rolling. So pretty interesting for YC to be able to do what they've done and really impressive. Moving down the power rankings, Gila Ridge, 33, Sierra Linda, 18. That's a 10 versus 21 matchup, Sam. And we saw some adversity in this one. This is the first time Gila Ridge has faced any adversity since St. Mary's, which is basically a month. They were down 18 to 13 at half, making a bunch of mistakes and struggling. And a not very nice halftime speech, I guess, snapped him out of it. Isaac has a good game, 9 for 17 for 139 and three touchdowns. And I mean, Sam, I don't know if we can talk about Prentice Box enough. 20 rushes for 229 and two touchdowns. He's been incredible. Just a really, really strong performance for Gila Ridge as they go into their rivalry game this week against Cibola. I mean, great to take that smack of adversity and pretty much just throw it right out the window in the second half, score 20 unanswered and get the win.
Yeah, it just speaks credit, volumes about their defense to me in terms of only giving up 5 second half points. That's a team that has relied on this defense all year long. And again, they were able to kind of give their offense a chance in the second half to kind of, rebound a little bit. And that's exactly what they did. And I think the best thing you could take away from this game is, for Gila Ridge ultimately is, hey, this is now a team that's found multiple different ways to win football games. They're not consistently just blowing everyone out. They've had some hiccups here in the road now and some bumps and bruises where you're like, hey, we don't know what might happen in the second half, but they've proven to, really be composed and not let that shake them and honestly play better when the times are in the clutch. We've seen those big plays, Mac, time in and time out. 2 minutes to go, they need a big play and they get one. And that's how you're going to win these playoff games. Once you get down to some of these teams that the Hawks are going to have to play, this competition is going to be really good. So they're going to have to get used to being in a little bit more of some competitive battles. And I think they saw pretty much everything that they wanted to see in that second half. Again, being able to respond and kind of flush what happened in that first half away.
Definitely. When you talk about that second half shutout, Drew Caudill and Chris Inglet have monster days along the defensive line. 13 tackles and 12 tackles respectively. Three TFLs, two TFLs, three sacks, two sacks respectively for Drew and Chris. I mean, really incredible stuff from the two of them. Nine sacks as a team, 88 total tackles as a defense. I think this win and then a potential win against Cibola that you have a lot of emotion to and a lot of emotion involved really gets you trending in the right direction as you move down the line towards the playoffs. That being said, we want to look at our which was I would say this was our game of the week last week, Cibola versus Kofa. Cibola, on the other hand, has a really great week against the Kings and really moves in the right direction. Unfortunately, it is against, this 4A Desert Southwest region, which doesn't have the most competitive equity, we'll say. But the Raiders look great and move towards the right direction against Gila Ridge. Daniel Sains and Marquez Montague each rushed for over 100 yards and two touchdowns. Damian Camarillo and Javi Rodriguez linked up for a great touchdown in that first quarter. Their defense was playing well. They link up for some touchdowns. They recover an onside kick that I honestly wasn't even really convinced it was much of an onside. It just was a ball that Kofa didn't really recover. Javi Rodriguez, 8 for 16 for 150, a tud and an interception, and a really great week for the Raiders.
Yeah, you said it again. A game we probably thought was going to be a little bit closer ultimately wasn't. So I think it's big that Cibola was able to take care of that moment and, kind of shut down all the little talk that Kofa was able to maybe keep this game closer, which didn't happen. Again, 41 points, holding this offense under 20. Again, Kofa's proved that their offense isn't a complete slouch. So ultimately, again, Cibola with a complete performance on both sides of the football. That's what they needed heading into this matchup with Gila Ridge, Mac. We talked with Caleb, like you said, like they're going to need a complete performance on Friday to even have a chance in that fourth quarter. So I think for them to see, elite coverage on all three sides of the football last week is, what they needed to heading into arguably the biggest game of their season, the make or break.
For sure. And I mean, looking at the other side of the coin for Kofa, this wasn't a bad week, I would say. After, you got boat raced by Sunrise, you rebound, you get 3 touchdowns, you have some really nice catches from a couple of your receivers. Nigel Escalante had a crazy, probably catch of the year candidate in that first half. I mean, one more score in the box score that we didn't have, who we weren't really sure about. And then we also have Julian Cruz, who had a kickoff return touchdown. It's well pretty much dominated, but at the same time, at least Kofa got a little bit of a tune-up in terms of getting their offense a little bit more productive before they face off against the Criminals this upcoming week. And I mean, good stuff for Kofa. Let's just
And
say that.
again, Kofa probably wouldn't have found themselves in this spot, say, 2 years ago, where they're scoring 20 points in this ball game. They're going into a game against Yuma High where, they're gonna probably end their season on a pretty good high note. It's gonna be it's just a different vibe for that program. And again, you gotta tip your cap to what they've done in this season. Again, just a completely different outlook on things in terms of what it's been, Mac.
For sure. Moving down the line, Trivium Prep and Antelope 38-13. Antelope has their season ended in the 2A region crossover game. Sam, we knew this game was going to be a tall task, beating Trivium, who is a top 12 team in the 2A division. But still, the Rams got to go out with some high notes. I want to give a huge shout out to Ozzie Martin, who is kind of the heart and soul of that team. 6 catches for 82 yards, 1 touchdown, 13 total tackles, and a 105-yard pick six. I mean, just unbelievable from Ozzy. I want to give him some love for that because, he has had a fantastic season and hopefully, continues this football journey as he goes forward. But if not, it's been so much fun watching him play. A couple other seniors have big games. Kevin Yagoyan has 3 catches for 43 yards in his final game for the Rams. They end the year at 4-6, Sam, but again, an incredibly tough schedule. I believe all 6 of those losses were to top 25 2A opponents. So still, Alfonso Brown's first year, not the greatest record in the world, but you look at the opponents they were facing, that's one to hang your hat on 110%.
Yeah, and I think them being, having a couple seniors again that, were some of the main players, they still were a younger team besides that. So I think overall some of these opponents are going to bode well for what this team's going to be next year too. And like you said, 6 top 25 two-way opponents, like that was a thing that they knew heading into the season was going to be, uphill challenge here. And I just want to credit Alfonso for what he's done. I think he set the culture there, and I think the kids in that team believes in what they want to be and what that program can be. Again, a community and a town that really is like needing something like that. So I really honestly like where they're heading, and just overall, I think this is kind of what you expect. But nice to see that some of their stars again, Train, Ozzy, and Kevin, were able to go out their last games with some high notes here.
For sure. And then our final contest in terms of our recaps was the Battle of the Winless, that being Yuma High and Somerton over in Somerton. I mean, Sam, this game was not pretty. It was nasty. It was gross. A lot of penalties, a lot of punts, a lot of mistakes. But someone had to come out on top in the battle of these two winless teams, and it was Yuma High. The Crims ride 2 first-quarter touchdowns from Marquise Dixon and Jonah Navarro to get the job done. Somerton did manage to score and match that, I believe, in the first half. And inconvenient for me because I showed up in the second half and didn't see any scores. But, it is what it is. Somerton, I want to give them some credit because I actually got to talk to Coach Atherton about this. They got the incredibly short end of the stick being put in this 4A region. This is a team that, probably should be playing 2A or 3A ball to start their varsity football journey. And here they are playing against 2 teams that are in the top, 26, 27 teams in the 4A region or in the 4A division. And then also, 2 bigger schools, far bigger than they are, in terms of size and I guess football kind of program build, I would say. Somerton, they just have to kind of lick their wounds and survive and continue to learn. Atherton told me, this is looking at it as a matter of survival and what they can learn from this stage of football as they move forward to potentially looking more like a 4A varsity team. So, want to give some love to Somerton, and it's not going to get any easier this week at Lake Havasu. But, Crims finally get a win too. Armando Mosqueda finally gets to have a win in the win column for them. And, Marquise Dixon probably didn't want to play a ton of quarterback this year, but at least, he had a touchdown and a win, and they can kind of hang their hat on that.
Yeah, and I think credit goes to both teams again for Yuma getting their first win, be able to hang in here and not let this game slip away from them. Obviously, their best chance to win all season long. And for Somerton, again, their best chance to win all season long as well. And, they were able to keep this a one-score game, and there's still talent on that Yuma team. Mac, we talked about it between Marquise and some of the other guys that they have. They're able to move the football. They do have some playmakers. So, ultimately you got to tip your cap for Somerton's defense holding that team to just 14 points when they're probably looking at that game as their time to maybe run up the score a little bit, and that's not what happened at all. So credit to that team.
Definitely. Well, that wraps up our recaps for this week. Just 5 games. And then as we move down the line, 4 games in week 10, 4 big ones. Let's knock out the two that, don't necessarily have the game of the week standing. So let's do YC and West Point and Somerton at Lake Havasu. YC at home versus West Point in their regular season finale to clinch the region, possibly to climb more in the rankings. YC is definitely the superior team here, Sam. I would say they probably take this one like 49-3.
Yeah, I think it's going to look pretty similar to what it did last week, where they get a bunch of guys involved. I'm thinking again, like 41 to 6, something along those lines. A complete performance all around, and this was the part of their schedule that we were kind of waiting for, just in terms of, we knew that those first 3 or 4 games, Vernon knew too that, they weren't facing any slouches. And we're starting to see that at the end of the season too. We're still covering some of those teams ourselves here. Holtville is playing for the Imperial Valley League Championship Friday. So again, like some of these teams that they did play in the beginning part of the season were incredibly talented. So nice to see them taking advantage of this part of their schedule here. And again, putting themselves in the thick of things. So it makes it more fun for us too, Mac, when we got another team potentially heading to the postseason.
For sure. And I think Vernon really addressed your points when we talked this past Friday about how they knew the second half of the season was going to be easier on paper. And they wanted to grab a couple wins from the opponents that they couldn't beat on paper. And, that didn't really work out until they played Cactus and just completely turned their season around. They were probably going to beat Willow Canyon and West Point either way, but still playing probably a lot better right now than they would have if they didn't get that Cactus win. So definitely a huge win for YC here. And then on the other side of the coin, Lake Havasu, a top 10 team in the 4A division, playing against Somerton, the very bottom team in the 4A division. You just got to hope that, Lake Havasu can show some mercy and Somerton can get some reps here to try and end their season on some sort of a satisfying note. I think Lake Havasu will probably rest some starters and just kind of get some guys rotating out to get ready for the next week of the playoffs instead of just maybe tuning up. This one not going to be pretty. I'm going to go like a 63-0.
Yeah, I'm somewhere with you there with the score, but it doesn't matter as much. I just hope they're able to have some good high moments here in this ball game. Like you said, good chance that Havasu rolls out a lot of backups, a lot of JV players. So hopefully Somerton's able to take advantage, maybe, and put the ball in the end zone a couple times here.
For sure. All right, Sam, the two big ones, Hugh Ridge versus Cibola and Kofa versus Yuma High. Let's take the Kings and the Crims first. The oldest rivalry in Yuma County football history. Kofa seeking their first win in this matchup since 2017. And then, I mean, Yuma High obviously been on a high note these past couple years, especially in this rivalry. But I think this is a year we see the change, Sam. Yuma High is just not what it once was and hasn't really had the team and the players to get a win against Kofa. And then obviously Kofa's had an incredible season and really shifted things around. I think it's incredible that we're potentially looking at a 4-win season for the Kings. So yeah, I'm gonna go Kofa in this one, something like I would say pretty dominantly, like a 35-6.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking similar along those lines. And I don't know, this Kofa team's kind of got that fiery edge to them where I think, throughout this town, they kind of look down upon in terms of football. And I think they want to start to cement their place as not the bottom feeders in this region, in this division here. So I think, Browning will have this team fired up and ready to go. I'm thinking a similar score here. I think Marquise Dixon's able to get Yuma on the board maybe twice, but I also think that Rodriguez and Kofa are able to score like 30 plus points in this game, maybe like a 31 to 15 type of game here. Just gets away from Yuma a little bit in the second half. Kofa's able to get a big win to end their season.
For sure. And then I mean, if you look at some of those matchups, Marquise Dixon's gonna have to play both ways. And I know he plays in the secondary and facing against guys like Julian Cruz and Nigel Escalante who have really come a long way as receivers this season. I think it matters on that two Kofa quarterback system to find the balls to get the ball to those guys. And they've definitely been more productive through the air than they have been on the ground. But honestly, I think against that Yuma High defense, as long as you can get around big Las Morales in the middle, you're going to be fine either way. So yeah, pretty big win for Kofa. I think that they get the job done this week in this one. Really kind of a shift in a historic rivalry. But moving to our other rivalry, this one's going to be fun, Sam. Gila Ridge versus Cibola. Cibola seeking their first win in this rivalry game since 2021. This is for the 4A Desert Southwest region title. And if you look at it from Cibola's perspective, they're going to have to be absolutely perfect. Um, I do not envy quarterback Javi Rodriguez in his first year of high school football having to face this Gila Ridge defense for a region championship. That is no easy task. I don't think that that is going to go over too well, to be completely honest with you. I probably am going to take Gila Ridge defense, having some points and really knocking some things off and getting some picks, getting some sacks, getting in the backfield, turning the ball over. And then, I mean, Cibola has a great defense, and they've ridden that defense all season long to, get stops and kind of set the tone for the offense. But Gila Ridge's offense is high powered. I think that matchup is a little bit more even in terms of the two sides of the ball compared to the Gila Ridge defense against that Cibola offense. Before we get into scores, Sam, I mean, just let me know what your analysis is on this because it's definitely a really interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, two teams that honestly, like at some points, I kind of expected Cibola to slip up a little bit more than they have, and like you said, on both sides of the football, they've been pretty efficient, but I don't think they've ran to a powerhouse quite like this, especially on defense, where, I don't know how many points they're going to be able to score. And it's more the problem, Mac, if they get down in this, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Healy Ridge enough or score quick enough to come back and mount a comeback in this. So will be interesting. They're going to need some turnovers. They're going to need, some of that trickery, some, weird things to probably happen in order to maybe steal this one. But again, I think what they've done this year from a growth standpoint has been huge. And maybe 5 weeks ago, I think they would have scored maybe 0 to 6 points in this game. But I'm seeing a little bit of a different story here. I see it more like a 31-12 type of game where that second half kind of just gets away for them. And like I said, I think the Gila Ridge defense is just going to be a little too overpowering for what Cibola has on offense.
For sure. I think I kind of want to agree with you and give a ton of credit to Cibola. I believe they are 6-2 on the season with that forfeit of Glendale. But I mean, what a way to turn things around from the past couple years. I mean, two win seasons, 1 win season. It's incredible, but at the same time, you have to look at some of their wins in this region. And to be completely fair, like just like Gila Ridge 8-1 and Cibola 6-2. Three of those wins for both of those teams are against three of them are against inferior opponents that really don't belong in this 4A division in terms of Kofa, Yuma High, and Somerton. And so I think Cibola has some track record, but at the same time, like you said, it's not really their offense is not really going to match up with this defense. I think in the first half, this could actually be a really interesting game. Cibola comes in fired up, maybe takes advantage of some Gila Ridge complacency in some sort of way if they don't minimize that, kind of like Sierra Linda did. If they're strategic, they attack in certain ways and they, take advantage in terms of maybe trickery or onside kicks or something like that. I could see this being a close game in the first half. I see another not so nice halftime speech from the Gila Ridge coaching staff turning the tide and turning this one into a 35-13 win for Gila Ridge. And then, maybe this gives them enough power points to sneak into a first round bye. So, yeah, I think this is probably the most interesting game. I will be there for the first half at the very least, and maybe stay as long as it is competitive and close, because definitely want to get over to Kofi Yuma High too. But that wraps up our picks. Next week, we will definitely have all the picks tallied to see who had the best picks record. I want to get into some season recaps next week as well, kind of do some playoff previews and maybe have a coach on or two and just see where we're at to wrap some post season stuff up because we probably will have 2 to 3 uh, playoff teams. And back to this Gila Ridge Cibola game. Hey, Cibola sneaks a win against Gila Ridge. They get a playoff spot. 110%. So, really looking forward to what we have on offer this week, Sam, and some more fun stuff to come.
Yeah, juice for it. It's going to be a big week and still more of this podcast to come for you guys. Still more football to be played, and we're excited to cover it, rooting for our teams in the postseason here down the stretch.
Definitely. And, just want to give all of our listeners and viewers some love for following along with us all season. If you've been here since the beginning, we appreciate you. If you've been here since last week, we appreciate you too. So thanks for watching, spending some time with us on your afternoon, your morning, your night, whenever you're watching this. And we will see you out on the sidelines. And then next week, have a good one.